So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. My name is Hannah Molinitsky. I'm the Public Information Officer for the City of Madison Engineering Division. I'm kind of here tonight to just kind of walk us through, give you the lowdown on how this meeting will work and different resources that you can stay connected, updated, and engage with us throughout this process. So we know that this is the first time that we're going to get as close to those final designs since that open house in May where we attracted over 1,000 people. So that was awesome. If you came, thank you for coming then, and thank you for coming tonight. It's good to see all of you again then. We know that there's a lot of eyeballs on this project. We also know that it's taken a lot of people to get us to this point, and so that includes community collaboration and engagement, and that is why we are here tonight, and we want to hear you. Several years that this has been in the making, and so that includes volunteer community members and, again, that extensive public engagement process. We want to create a space that is culturally diverse with merchants offering locally grown produce, food products, handmade arts and crafts, as well as a space for community events, classes, and so much more, which we'll hear more about tonight a little bit. So we also know that the heart of the public market will be the merchants who launch their businesses in this space. The city's Market Ready program is working with 30 entrepreneurs who are developing their businesses to be in this market. We are so proud of this program. In addition, there are more than 200 additional businesses who have expressed interest in being in this space, in this market, and we'll hear more on that in just a few minutes. There's a lot of people who have gotten the market to this place, like I mentioned at the beginning. Collaboration has been key, again, which brings us to tonight. And I'm here to give you a rundown on how that's all going to work. But first, I'd like to introduce our team. We have a number of people here tonight as resources for you. From the City of Madison, Brent Paba, Project Manager. Brent's right over there. If everyone would just wave real quick so everyone knows where to find you. Brian Cooper, Principal Architect, City of Madison. You may have seen Brian when you were walking in. Dan Canelli, the city's Business Resource Manager and the Economic Development Division's point person on the public market. From MSR Design, Tracy Lesneski, Principal. Gerald Iman, Project Manager. Mitch Carr, Architect. Lauren Gardner, Interior Designer. And then from the Madison Public Market Foundation, Amanda White, leading the capital campaign for the project, right over there. Megan Ballard, providing project management for the foundation. Jamal Strickland, president of the foundation board and key project leader and visionary, of course. Also, we have several additional members who are here tonight of the foundation board and public market development committee. So they'll be happy to answer some of your questions during our small breakout sessions after the Q&A. I'd also like to introduce some of the alders that are here tonight that are involved in this project. District 3, Alder Lindsay Lemmer. District 6, Marsha Rummel. And District 12, Alder Syed Abbas.
Hello.
Yes, and Alder Abbas is up there.
Correct pronunciation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is such a fun project to collaborate with the alders and the community on. And Alder Abbas is in the district where the public market will be located, and he'd like to say a couple words now.
Can I move this?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for being here. First of all, I will start by saying thank you to everyone in the past who worked really hard on this project. I will not take credit of this project because when I joined City Council, that project was already moving forward with full pace and full dedication. So those who worked really hard in the past, thank you everyone for working really hard for equity and creating equal opportunity for people of color, and especially bringing food on the Near East Side. I will also say thank you to the present team right now, including my colleagues Alder, and also Dan Canelli and other city staff, and also public market committee. All the members on the market committee, they did a phenomenal job, and we have a common goal to move forward and keep equity as a focus on a public market. I will also highlight a couple of things. So during this last couple of years, I migrate here in Madison from New York, and before New York from Pakistan. And back in New York, and similar culture in Pakistan, because New York is very diverse, food is one thing which really bring everyone close. Delicious food, different culture, you eat. Even sometimes you have political different views about different countries, but when you go and eat in Brooklyn, Jewish food from Israel, a restaurant open, somebody from locally from Israel open restaurant, I was there and I eat food and I love it, and give me an opportunity to know them. So political views aside, food is a source to bring everyone together, just like, I believe, just like music, because that's a food for the body and for your mind. So this project is extremely important, extremely important to move forward, because this project brings love, peace, equity, and opportunity for people of all the background, all the color. Being an immigrant, when I moved here, I have to go through a learning curve. It's not easy to understand a new culture. Also learn a new language. And when you learn the language, you make a lot of mistakes, silly mistakes. Well, still I'm doing that. Sometimes writing, I make mistakes, but those for a good cause, not to offend anyone. So in this program, I met some of the vendors which share similar background, came from a background where they also go through the struggle, and they have that opportunity now to create something. And that's what American Dream is. Moving forward, finding opportunity, and we as a team, you, me, city leaders, alders, we want to make sure this move forward, we give them this opportunity. And that's why we're all here, and I really appreciate all of you being here. Another good thing about this project, and also overall, I'm doing in my district too, about sustainability. And sustainability not about only, of course, we want to focus green area, solar, and other sustainability, but sustainability of the business, sustainability of bringing diversity, ideas. We want to make sure we have a sustainability holistically. And this project fulfill all check marks, all those things. And I personally think so. This will be phenomenal opportunity, and this project will definitely be a great success, and we should be all proud of this project. And I hope this project bring more love beside economic development, beside what economic benefits we get. We will have a great opportunity to know neighbors and meet diversity inside the market and talk to people. I will say thank you, everyone. I know you all want to hear more, right? No, I'm just teasing. I don't want to take more of your time, but thank you all for being here. I appreciate that.
So when you came in, you had a handout out there. You also had a blue question card, and I'll go through all of that in just a few minutes here. Also, MSR Design will begin the presentation in a few minutes. In that presentation, you're going to learn site orientation and context, site design strategy, market exterior and interior, sustainability features involved in the design, and we just touched on that from Alder Abbas as well. So the next part is when you have questions. So again, with the blue card, awesome, good to see that. Yep, Brian, thank you. So you got a blue card, hopefully, when you came in. At any point in that presentation, if you have a question or a comment, write it down, hold it up, I'll come and grab it from you, and then we'll use that opportunity to ask those questions during our panel session. So we'll have our panel take the questions, we'll read them through, and we'll make the most out of this for you, and then you'll have a chance to follow up in the small breakout sessions after, if you so choose. Okay, I think I covered everything. One more reminder, this will be posted, the presentation will be posted online as well. So cityofmadison.com, it'll be on the homepage, we'll make sure that it's there, and then also on the project page. So now I will hand it over to Dan Canelli, City's business manager, with more on how we've gotten to this point, and then again, we'll have that presentation from MSR Design.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I'll be really quick and turn it over to MSR in a moment to talk about the design, but just some very quick background. Again, I'm Dan Canelli with the city's Economic Development Division. So the city's been working on the Madison Public Market project for quite some time. You know, the process has included developing a business plan, doing market analysis, cultivating potential vendors. As Hannah mentioned, we've got interest from over 200 small businesses that want to be in the market, creating the Market Ready program, which has been an incredible success and just a very inspiring element of the project, developing the operating plan for how the market is going to be financially viable. So there's a lot of pieces to the overall puzzle of the public market. I would be happy to talk about that with any of you. The Public Market Foundation members would as well. So that's all kind of going on. The subject for tonight is really about the design. So today's conversation is about the physical space of the market. We're making great progress on the design. We're making great progress on all those other things, the operations and vendors and so on. But for tonight's discussion, have your kind of design thinking cap on, because that's really the main focus. And then, I also wanted to mention that the city's Public Market Development Committee, which is a volunteer board, an official city committee, has been working on this public market project since 2012. They are the city's official oversight body for the project and have committed an enormous amount of time and effort to that. So I just wanted to recognize we have a few PMDC members in the room. Maybe you all could raise your hand and let's just acknowledge the Public Market Development Committee members for their work. Thank you. So the PMDC is the city's official body overseeing the project. In addition, the Madison Public Market Foundation was formed in 2017 in partnership with the city to do two things: to lead the fundraising effort to raise private dollars for the project and to become the future operator of the market. So the Public Market Foundation is an independent 501c3 organization that has a formal agreement with the city but is separate from the city. And their role, again, is fundraising, building momentum, building support, and ultimately being the operator of the market. And here again, we have some members of the foundation board and the foundation's advisory council here tonight, so maybe those folks could also raise their hands. Thank you, yeah. So, I think that this incredible community and citizen commitment to this project has really been the thing that has kept it going and the thing that has brought us so far and has brought us here tonight. Wanted to make one final note. The project is part of the city's Economic Development Division budget. Mayor Rhodes Conway has, in her budget announcement earlier this week, maintained the city's commitment to keeping the project in the budget. And then in addition, as I mentioned, the Madison Public Market Foundation is raising private dollars and reaching out to the private sector to bring capital to the project. And then we're also pursuing some state and federal grant funding. So between the foundation, some grants, and the city, we have the resources we need to bring the project to fruition. So now, we are full steam on the design and hope to be under construction next year and opening after that. So thanks again for coming. And at this point, we're going to turn it over to our incredible design team, who is going to walk us through where we are in the design process. So thanks again. So now Tracy with MSR and the team will take us through the design.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Is this on? No? I got to pretend I'm eating it. All right. I'm Tracy Lesneski. It's a privilege to be here, really. We are latecomers to this whole process, but we have the honor of bringing physical life to all of the dreams and all of the thoughts and all of the brainstorming that's been happening over the last 7-some years. And so I just want to have the design team one more time stand and raise their hands, because I want you to seek these guys out. They're the heavy lifters here. I just get to be up here for this part of the presentation. These are the heavy lifters of the team. Mitch Carr, project architect. Find him over here by the boards. Lauren Gardner, project interior designer. And Gerald Amol, project manager. So, yeah. As Hannah said, we're going to go through a few key components to the project to keep this part brief so that we can really spend a lot of time talking with one another at the boards. This is going to be kind of high level, but please do jot down as many questions as you have on those blue cards because we do want to have a nice conversation. But we will go through where the site is. Many of you probably are aware of where it's located, but we will help you find that in your cognitive maps. We will go through how we're treating the site, what things we're doing to it. We'll talk a little bit about the exterior and the interior of the building, and then sustainable design, which I know is a high value for the community of Madison, and one of the reasons we love working with you. We will talk about our strategies as well. So like I said, we're kind of newcomers to this whole process, but we have been the design team since we were selected in the spring of this year, and we really got started in earnest in March with what we call the consolidated design process, which essentially is trying to marry the program requirements of the market with the built environment that we have been given, which is the Fleet Services building and the site, and all of the requirements that are needed to make it function well, be a wonderful place to be, and as Alder talked about feeding the body and the mind, and I will say the spirit as well, so that when you arrive, you feel good and come here and want to return and spend money and support all these wonderful vendors. But also then we have budget realities as well. So there's kind of 3 legs that we're marrying together in this first phase of design. We have about 3 weeks left before this phase is complete, so you're seeing a pretty well-baked design at this point, and it's a perfect time for us to get a little bit more input from you all to help put the finishing touches on the design. After that, we will launch into the construction documentation phase, and this is where we put a lot more detail and specificity to the design ideas that have emerged through this first milestone in the process. So there we will be getting into the very nitty-gritty of exactly what the flooring is, exactly what the light fixtures will be. We have ideas about that now, but we will be specifying every last little detail, every last little fastener that attaches materials to the building. And we will also be looking at furnishings and equipment and things like that. The target is for construction to begin about this time next year, so 4th quarter of 2020, with the goal of opening in the 3rd quarter of 2021. That may seem like a long time, especially when you've been waiting years already for the market to open, but it will go fast. And for those of us who are working on the design, it feels really fast. We always start our projects with what we call project guiding principles. And this is a way for all of the people, all the stakeholders who are involved in a project to get on the same page about what the highest aspirations are for success. What does success look like? And you'll notice that the very first one on here is that it's vendors first. The market succeeds when the vendors succeed. So one of our guiding principles, and really kind of the guiding principle to kick it all off, is making sure that all the decisions we make related to the design are in support of helping the vendors succeed. So thinking about functionality of how trash and recycling are handled, even those kinds of things, is a big part of what we've been thinking about. Equitably designed, also really important guiding principle to make sure that everybody feels welcome and everybody can find themselves there and feel like they belong. So we're thinking a lot about things like gender-inclusive toilets, for example. That's just one way that we are making sure that the building will be welcoming to everybody. The budget, as I mentioned, is always a part of any project, and we are making sure that we're spending those dollars as wisely and as carefully as we can so that we get long-term impacts from the money that we're spending, and we aren't thinking short-sighted or short-term. We want to make sure that we're accounting for life cycle costs, so we set up the foundation to be able to operate the building really well long into the future, and again, that the vendors can thrive. We are using the assets of the existing building. We're fortunate to have this existing building to start with. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment, but we're using all of that to the best of our ability. So rather than scrub down figuratively, it will be cleaned, scrub down figuratively this building and remove everything that makes it what it is, we're using every bit of that we can. That's a budget thing, but it's also a memory and association thing. That's, I think, important for a community to have a connection to what was there at one time and have that connection. Nourishing is the next guiding principle, and that is talking about supporting life, both the creatures that, birds and such, bees that come to the site, but also the people who are working there and the people who visit. Just 5 more of these. Of its place. We want to make sure it feels really of Madison and respects the heritage. We'll use a lot of public art to help with this, reflect the cultures that are a part of this area and the wonderful Yahara River and connection to the water. The site is really well connected, and we want to make the most of that. So we know people will be arriving on foot, by bicycle, by vehicle, by many different modes of transportation, and that connectedness is something that we're celebrating. We want the market to be an all-season draw. So, winter is more than half the year here in Wisconsin, and so we want to respect that and make sure people have a good reason to continue coming. The market is a new endeavor for the community, and it needs to be able to adapt as the foundation learns things about how to operate it better or more efficiently as we go along. There will naturally be ways that we're learning all kinds of things as we get into the first few years of the market operation, so it needs to be able to adapt. Also, it wants to be responsive to many different kinds of activities. So there is the market activity that we think about, going to a prepared food vendor, for example, or a craft vendor, but there's also events, cultural opportunities, music, pop-up vending. There's all kinds of ways that the building needs to be responsive and adaptable, and so we're thinking about that as a part of the design. And then last but certainly not least, the building has to be functional. We need to support the financial success of this endeavor with innovative and yet nimble and simple ways of being functional. Okay, so next we'll talk a little bit about the site and context. For those of you who aren't aware, the new address of the public market will be 200 North 1st Street, and it is located on the isthmus between the two lakes. I'll zoom in just a little bit more. Hopefully you can read those street designations, but it's essentially between East Johnson and East Washington, not West, that would be hard, East Washington Streets, and at North 1st. So if you think of the corner of East Johnson and North 1st, that is where our site is. I think many people who haven't been by there or have been by there and have not really paid attention at that intersection. Right now it's hard to miss because there's a lot of construction happening. But many people, including myself, drove by that many times and didn't realize what was happening there, that there was this building with the fleet services in it. And so that's one of the things we've been thinking a lot about, is how do we make sure that people do notice now what's happening there, because it is a really great location. There's a lot of traffic coming by and collecting from many different ways. There's also the Burr Jones Park, which is a nice amenity to have outside the market site, and of course people are familiar with the Yahara River. A little bird's eye view to remind you of what it is, where that intersection is, and how people are approaching from the various locations, in this case coming from, essentially coming from the airport or 151, or 51 rather. Okay, so diving in a little bit more closely into the site, this is actually one of our boards. So if you are really interested, where's Ken? Ken, I lost you, Psyche. Ken is our landscape designer, landscape architect. He will be stationed at the site board. Ask all your detailed questions to Ken. We can answer them too, but Ken will have all the robust, in-depth knowledge, and I'm sorry that I didn't introduce you before, Ken. That's my faux pas. So to walk you just really briefly around the site, because you can dig into it in a little bit more detail later on the board. First Street is at the top of the slide, and East Johnson is to the left of the slide. You can see the text up here. We have about 41,000 square feet of footprint of building. And on the north side, you'll see all these numbers, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are referring to some public gathering places. I'll get into that in a little bit as well. But we're looking for as many site opportunities as possible for people to be able to gather and enjoy being outside in the market. And then along this other side of the building, and actually I'm going to just orient everybody. North is to the left on this slide. And so it is always confusing, I think, when we're talking about the building to call this north and not this north. So this is west, down is west. So I'm going to keep on doing it that way. North is to the left, down is west, up is east, south is to the right. It's a little odd, but that's the way this project has been set up to be oriented. So to the west is where the parking primarily is. And you'll notice there's a couple of other little L-shaped buildings and such. Those are on our property, but this is belonging to the police and their evidence storage. They will keep that. So we don't really get to use this building. This L-shaped building is part of our parcel and could be used for any manner of things. It may be used for storage. It may be used for artist studios. It's really for future determination. Okay, so as I mentioned before, site access is one of the things that this site really has going for it. You can arrive by any mode of transportation. And we have ample bike parking. We have about 100 bike parking spots right now, knowing that Madison is a heavy biking community. We also have about 110 vehicular parking spots, which is well over what the zoning would require. There's a bus stop right at the corner of East Johnson and North First, so that's obviously very convenient. You can see the little icon up here for the bus. And we will address the waiting for the bus and just the experience of taking the bus and arriving at that corner of the site. We have a drop-off zone right here for those using ride-sharing apps and or shuttle services. People will be able to arrive by bike paths, and those bike paths will be addressed to be a little bit wider and a little nicer than they are currently. And then, of course, just personal vehicle. There are two primary entries into the building. One is on the north side, here by this pink arrow, and one is on the east side that you would view from North First. There are many other entries, however, as well. Those of you who are familiar with the Fleet Services building know that it is a very porous building in terms of openings. There's a lot of garage doors, obviously, because it is currently a place for servicing the fleet of the city. So there are lots of different openings, and we will take advantage of all of those as they are wonderful for a market experience. So I'm going to just show you, oops, sorry, I'm going to show you, I was going to try and point, and I can't do that. We have a number of garage doors. That's what these blue arrows are indicating. And we also have on one side of the building what we're calling the South Hall or the Events Hall, the ability to come in directly into that entry location. So one moment, and we'll get to that in a little more detail. As I mentioned, we will have many outdoor gathering opportunities with tables and seating and benches and such. The raised patio belongs to the anchor tenant in that part of the building. We expect that will be a very attractive, wonderful place to sit and to perch. And then the areas that are outlined in blue are other areas where you can get outside and have an indoor-outdoor connection between the building and the site. For those who have not seen the Fleet Services building in person, here you go. This is just a little example of some of the facades of the existing building. It is a utilitarian building. It is very functional. It fits its purpose very well now, and it will be a perfectly suited building for transforming into a market. It's a blank slate. Great for public art opportunities on the exterior. As I mentioned, all of these wonderful openings allow for great indoor-outdoor connection and views into the building, so you can see all the wonderful things that are happening inside. And easy access, as I mentioned, with all sorts of great transit connections. So right now, pretend the construction is done, and you're standing on the corner of North First and East Johnson. This is what you would currently see. The proposed view is something like this, where there is a lot of activity and plaza with plantings, and maybe there's seasonal displays, gourds for this time of year, and pumpkins and things. It will be well lit. There will be trees and plantings to help it feel more comfortable and to provide a little shade when you're sitting. There's space for pop-up vendors, so on nice days like today, you could have outdoor vending or outdoor stalls and commerce happening. You'll notice we've got some areas highlighted here with mural. That's suggesting that we will have some public art to mark this building and hopefully catch your eye as you're coming by on your bike or in your vehicle. As I mentioned before, now you might kind of miss it when you drive by. We want to make sure that there's something colorful and vibrant to catch your eye. So site lighting from the inside, like a lantern a little bit, and the art, I think, will help catch your eye, plus all of the wonderful activity happening. You'll notice there's a sign band along the top of the building. There is just about to get underway an identity and branding effort that is being done by a different firm, actually. Can I?
I think so.
Okay.
Sure.
Is it okay? Okay. Zebra Dog, who many of you may be aware of, sorry, I should have asked that before, has been hired, and we're really excited to work with them and integrating the branding that will be emerging and how that gets incorporated with the outside of the building. I could say more, but we'll keep going. All right, so then the inside. Here we are coming just in the front door of the market. So we just walked through, walked through the building, or through the entry, and we're confronted with all this wonderful aroma and visual texture and color and excitement of all the vendors. What you're first seeing here is a little bit of retail in the front. That's part of the flexible and adaptable program that I was mentioning before. Some displays that are on casters and are modular and can be put together in different ways to be larger or smaller and moved to different areas as needed. You're also seeing all the way through the building out to the east side, or to the south side of the building, where you see a glimpse of daylight. And in the mid-ground, you see the stair that takes you up to the mezzanine, where there's a nice perch to sit. And so you get an opportunity to really understand the breadth of the offerings as you walk into the entry. So as I mentioned, clear orientation. Once you come in the building, you'll be able to see everything that's in front of you, ready to be had for your enjoyment. There's great indoor-outdoor connections. So right to the right of this entry view, there is one of those existing garage door openings where you can have this nice flow between the parking area and the plaza outside, where there will be a seasonal pavilion of sorts where maybe there are information and an exhibit happening, or maybe there's some sort of seasonal vegetables or fruits being sold, and you can spills in and out into the inside of the market. We've gotten a lot of feedback in other meetings like this about the need to have the ability to slow down and browse while other people are walking by to get to other parts of the market. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking about the widths of aisles and different experiences with the aisles so that they're not all one size fits all or all the same. But we've got ample space to be able to have people browse and circulate, or even have a plate of food while other people are able to get by to other parts of the market. As I mentioned, we've got opportunities for retail at all scales. So there's place and location for startup businesses. There's place and locations for people who really just want to display something for a day or two. They can be large-scale vendor displays. They can be very, very small, micro vending. And so we're building in as much flexibility and as much responsiveness as we can with a very simple, flexible framework that allows that to happen. There will, of course, be vendor stalls that are more permanent in nature, and those will be equipped with sinks and hoods if they're meant for food prep, and all of the kind of basics to get somebody started in that vendor stall, so that there isn't the issue of having to bring in multiple contractors or have the coordination between having to get all of these things installed. These stalls will be ready and outfit with those basics to help the vendors get a great start from the beginning. We have lots of opportunities identified for art and exhibit, interpretive exhibits, things about the place or the cultures that are represented, but also just opportunities for terrific public art to enliven the space and connect more personally. So the level 1 plan, as I mentioned, we have about 40,000 square feet. That's including the mezzanine level. And it includes the South Hall, which is largely thought of as a big flexible event space with a tenant at the east end of it. This is one of the boards as well, so I'm going to skip past this slide and just get you some of the highlights so you get kind of oriented. So on the north end, coming off of the East Johnson side, is the main entry, as I mentioned. That's the primary way people will come into the market. You'll be parking, you can see kind of in parentheses along the bottom of the slide where it says parking, that's where the parking is located on the site. There are a number of secondary entries as well, one coming off of First Street, and two that are along the east side of the building, west side of the building, one that is directed toward the parking and one that's directed really toward the event hall, coming into the event hall proper. And then there are also some seasonal opportunities. As I mentioned, there are a lot of openings that were meant for the vehicles coming in and out of the Fleet Services building, and we're making as much use of those as possible. So that entry view, if you remember, there's the two garage doors that are right to the right of that view that are on the left side of this slide here. And then on North First Street, we've got two other opportunities for some garage doors that on great days these can be open. And then this one really is more about loading well, it's not really about loading. Let me move on. We'll keep going. This, however, is our primary entry into the event hall. And those of you who are who was at the meeting in May? Yeah, a lot of you. You saw how we used these doors to bring people and their food trucks and food carts in, yeah? And that's the intent, again, with the South Hall, is that we would have the opportunity to do that again on a more regular basis. As I mentioned, we've been thinking a lot about the circulation and widths of aisles and such, and paying a lot of attention to what the experience is like in many of the markets that we've all experienced around this region or country or world, and learning what we can from that. And one of the things that we are instituting here is to have not a one experience fits all street, if you will. We have a main artery. That view that I showed you of just inside the entry is the widest of our streets. And it also is the connector between all three of those halls. The entry hall, the main market hall, and the event hall, which is to the south. And that is our real orienting, I would say, street. That's where you'll find the stair, that's where you'll find the toilets. That's also where you will have your first arrival experience often, and sight lines all the way through. The blue, we're calling something like a boulevard. It's a little smaller than a main artery, but still quite primary and very wide and gracious and able to get past while somebody's browsing or chatting with a vendor and such. And so these are, if you think of great cities around the world, the different scales of streets and experiences, this is a little more intimate feel. And then the green is yet one more scale, more intimate. And if you think of even some of those wonderful places when you stumble around a corner and you find a shop that you didn't know existed before and you get very excited and you have a great memory of that, this is how we imagine that street happening. the Green Street. And certainly there will be moments like that throughout the market, but the intent is that there are memorable, sticky experiences that you have as you experience various parts of this market. We would not want every location to feel the same. We want people to be able to connect and relate to various parts of the market. And so this gives you just a little taste of what's going to be present in the market. There's a mix of vendors being considered and thought about. That will be finalized later. That's not in our purview. But this just gives you an idea of what could be. With little icons that show you where prepared food vendors might be, where bakery or coffee might be. The red is the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin special exhibit and experience that's being also designed by Zebra Dog. As we're looking forward to how that is unrolling. It's going to be a really wonderful experience. In green are the vendor stalls that are a little more permanent, as I mentioned before. And some of the smaller, lighter green along the main artery that I was describing before, those are these modular, more micro retail that I was describing that can be taken apart, moved around to different parts of the market. We have some seating opportunities on this level as well, number 6, number 5. And a lot of the seating will be on the mezzanine, as you'll see in just a moment. So as I mentioned, a lot of the seating up on the mezzanine level, and also a play area for the children you'll see in just a moment. And then and toilets on both levels as well, which we'll get to in just a second. We also have to have things that keep the building running, so building services for the market staff and for the vendors. And as I mentioned, toilets on both levels, I think. Okay. And then places for people to gather and to rest and enjoy one another's company on both levels. So those are those market locations in green. Again, on both levels. There has been a lot of work thinking about the makeup of the vendors, and I think if you have questions about that in the Q&A, you can maybe, I'll direct those to Dan, but this is just an example of the many different kinds of things that will be present and exciting offerings that are for you. The mezzanine will have an opportunity to visually and emotionally connect with the rest of the market with an overlook. And so now we have just come up the stairs. I'm sorry, I seem to have missed a slide, so I just want to orient you here with where the stair is. Let me go back one. Okay. That main artery, as I mentioned, is coming right through here, and you see that there's a stair here and a stair here, as well as an elevator. And I don't know if I can point with this without touching the thing. Can you see my cursor? Okay, stair and a stair here to get you up to the mezzanine level, and an elevator if you choose or need. This is that main artery. I think it's easier if I point. And here is a bank of gender-inclusive toilet rooms on this level. We have all gender-inclusive toilet rooms in this building with a shared sink and a comfort room as well, should you need to have some privacy. As you come upstairs, then you land here at the mezzanine when you come up the stair, or you land here, the mezzanine. And you have all this seating to take advantage of. And then here's another bank of those toilet rooms up here, and then the staff offices for the foundation. Right in the middle of this seating area is a really fun little opportunity for a fixture for children to be able to play. There will be some sort of interactive fixture yet to be determined, but it could be that it's a grocery store or a mini market or a post office or some sort of interactive fixture for children to use. Okay, so here we are now. We have just come up the stair. In the distance in that slide toward the back is where the main entry is. You can see we're suggesting that there's a long, expansive wall that could be used for mural, but also that there's opportunities to sit and overlook and see the excitement and vibrancy of the market below. Potentially, you could be watching a game on a projected image on a wall. The bathrooms are right behind this wall, if you remember that plan. And then there's a counter here with a sink if you need for certain events that you may have up here. The South Hall, which is overlooking the other direction from where that image is a very flexible space that can be used for any manner of things. It could be used for an event like we had in May. It could be used as a gala or reception or banquet. And it can be used as a pop-up market as well to expand the opportunities for vendors. The existing interior of the building will be cleaned and maintained. There's a lot of really wonderful patina and visual texture that we want to take advantage of, again, to have that connection between what was and what is becoming. We are inserting a few new things into the building, but it's all primarily backdrop. So it's a backdrop for art or backdrop for the vendors themselves. We want the architecture to be quite quiet visually, so that the market itself is what you see and notice and what brings the visual texture and color. The Mezzanine Overlook will be quite a special space and will be lighter in visual weight. It'll feel connected visually to the other two spaces that flank it. Being very careful about how we introduce and use materials in the building. We're limiting the scope of new materials being introduced into the building. There's already, as I said, kind of a patina and a character that's present, and we don't want to interfere with that. We're using only healthy and durable materials. It harkens back to our guiding principles. And we're trying to be really smart about the materials that we use, making sure that we don't have to add additional finishes to them, or that if they are already durable in amongst themselves, we don't have to do something else to them to add another finish or another layer. So that's a sustainable strategy as well as a budgetary strategy. And speaking of sustainable strategies, we do have quite a lot of detail on the boards, but I just would like to say that the way that we're thinking about sustainability is very comprehensively and holistically. So we're thinking a lot about water, as I mentioned. We will have water capture system, taking water from the roofs and storing it in cisterns to be used for flushing toilets, for example, in the market. And that's what that little icon is showing you there. That is an opportunity for learning about water, which, as I mentioned earlier, is really especially important on this site, but also for this community. We will have a photovoltaic array on the roof, capturing sunlight and converting that to energy. We have many ways of accessing the site, and that is a sustainable strategy as well. Being able to use public transport or your feet or a bicycle. We're thinking a lot about the well-being of the people who work and visit, and you can read more about that on the board. We've talked a lot about change and flexibility and resiliency. We're thinking a lot about how we not only are reusing this building, which is a sustainable strategy in and of itself, but also how it can adapt over time. And then we're thinking about not only the people, but also the ecology and birds and critters and things that need to thrive for our world to be healthy. So that is the formal part of the presentation. I tried to keep it as short as possible. It's a lot to cover, and I think there's probably a lot of questions. So we'll wrap it up here. Hannah, is this going back to you? Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I have quite a few questions, but if you haven't handed it in yet, just hold it up and one of our teammates will gather it from you. So we'll start first. Can you tell us more about the Market Ready program? Dan? Or anyone who wants to jump in? It's kind of how this will run, and feel free to add on to anyone who is speaking.
Sure, yeah, I can start, and Jamal might have some thoughts on this too. But so, back in 2015, we were developing the original business plan for the public market, and one of the main priorities was how do we make sure that the market is inclusive and welcoming to the entire community. And we used the city's, what at the time was very new racial equity analysis tool to study the market and come up with some strategies to make sure it was equitable and inclusive. And one of the ideas that kind of kept coming up over and over was that one of the best ways to do that was to ensure that the merchants who would occupy the market with their businesses represented the diversity of the community. So that equity analysis that we did a couple of years ago sort of led to the idea of, well, maybe we should be intentional about that. Maybe we should create a program that's really focused on cultivating entrepreneurs that will be in the market. So we started this program, we called it the Market Ready Program. The city budgeted some resources for it, and we engaged the Northside Planning Council. Abba and Ian are here from NPC, as well as some other community partners to really kick off this program. And they, led by Mike Miller from the city's Economic Development Division, really, Mike really kind of developed the details of the program. We engaged NPC, had a really good outreach effort, got a lot of applicants for this program, and ultimately selected 30 entrepreneurs. Some of them are here today. Raise your hand if you're a Market Ready participant. Yeah. So we have this, just kind of committed, motivated group of these amazing entrepreneurs that are in this program, and the program includes, one-on-one business coaching. It includes, kind of curated training programs, some small grant funding to help seed, the costs of buying ingredients or, buying a piece of equipment to process food or whatever. And these folks are, really working hard to kind of develop their business and sort of pursue their dream of ultimately occupying space in the market as a merchant. So it's the most exciting part of the project in my mind, and just really inspiring to see the Market Ready program flourish and kind of watch these amazing entrepreneurs as they pursue their vision of being in the market, while the city and the foundation can kind of continue to develop the physical space. So that's kind of the origin of the Market Ready program, and it's ongoing. And I'm sure some of the participants would be happy to chat if you have more questions about that.
Could you name a couple of communities that would be considered a model public market? Kind of a cool question.
The foundation has taken a lot of care in traveling around to different markets, different cities, to learn as much as we possibly can about not just running a market, but how do these markets come about. Some of the Market Ready program has done as well, to find out, what is it like to be a vendor? What is it like to, talking all the way to people who actually operate the markets, and what does it take to operate a market? So there have been a lot of places that we've gone, and I think I really like the Milwaukee Public Market. It does a really good job of operating on the fly. I mean, it started as trying to be a farmer's market-esque type place. The community did not want that. The community wanted prepared food and some place to go on your lunch break, and then it was a desolate area until they actually turned their direction into the direction the community wanted. And now they're bustling at all hours of the day, especially lunchtime. If you've ever been to Milwaukee Public Market, it's shoulder to shoulder. So, I mean, that would be the one that I would say that, in our area kind of stands out as if you do what the community asks you to do and provide some opportunity for vendors in the community, you can be very successful. So that's the one in our area that immediately kind of stands out as, as a model of community and private ventures kind of working together to create something sustainable for the public.
How are you anticipating changes in technology and physical infrastructure needs? Yes, I can't read the last word of that, but I think you get the gist there.
Yeah, Tracy and I can handle this. So I think what's working really well for us is this building is very open, and as you can see the rafters, and you'll be able to see existing utilities. One way that we're handling future technology is going back to adaptability. And the building itself is really set up for changes for the future, not only in program, but as new paradigm shifts come about because of technology, I think we'll be able to handle that better than most buildings because of the openness of the structure and the surrounding environment.
Yeah, and I will add that I mentioned this framework for the vendors, and that extends from all scales or the whole continuum of vendors. So there's the micro bits that I mentioned before and pointed out in the image that are modular and can come apart. There's also just the framework that is supporting all of the services, the plumbing, and everything that's coming into some of those more permanent vendor locations. That also is kind of modular on a bigger scale. So it's not something you would change daily, but certainly it will evolve, and as Brent said, as technologies or ways of delivering service change over time, we'll respond to that as well. So we're trying to be really smart about every intervention that we're putting into this building.
This one might be for Tracy or Brent as well. How is accessibility designed into the building? Can vendors with disabilities use it? How close is the drop-off area for patrons with disabilities to get to the entrance? And then there's one more, but we'll tackle those first three. So accessibility designed into the building. Can vendors with disabilities use it? We'll start there.
Okay, so again, that framework for the vendor locations is meant to be able to work for whatever the situation may be. So all of that is customizable and changeable. Yes, the doors are going to be accessible. The toilet rooms are accessible. There is an elevator to bring people to the upper level if need be. Beyond that, some other things that maybe we don't think about when we think about inclusion or accessibility are things like having a place to, when the visual and audio noise or stimulation, thank you, gets to be too much. We have places where people can retreat if they need to and have a quiet, dimmable space. We call that the comfort room. We also have those rooms for parents with a child that needs calming, or nursing mothers, or people who need to administer medication, whatever the need may be. So that's one way that we're being very inclusive. And I think the lighting itself will be a way of being very inclusive and welcoming. We have tiered lighting so that it's not all bright all the time. It's kind of focused in on certain zones. So again, if you have sensitivity to light, you can find places that won't feel as bright, or if you need more light, there will be places where you can have more light.
And then also, how close is the drop-off area for patrons with disabilities to get to the entrance?
I'm going to point to Ken.
Here, and I'll get a microphone for you, Ken, so everyone can hear you.
Thank you. The drop-off is located, depending on which entrance you go to, 60 to 40 feet away from probably the closest entrance. That's the actual formal drop-off, but there are a number of sort of delivery spaces that are within literally 10 feet of a door.
This one might be for Dan or Jamal. How much will rent be, and how will it vary by square feet, by locations, by amenities? It's the first part of it.
The actual amount of rent has yet to be calculated. I think the most important thing when we look at that is we want to maintain inclusivity for all vendors. So we don't want rent to be a barrier to entry into the market. That being said, obviously there will be a certain amount of rent that will need to be paid, and a certain amount of build out that will need to be done on the vendor's aspect of it. That's still being looked at and worked at, but like I said, we want to operate in the realm of not being a hindrance to being into the market.
And I'll add on a little bit. In addition to that, so one of the strategies to accomplish that is that the Madison Public Market Foundation will really be charged with negotiating the terms of leases with individual vendors. Financially, the city is leading the effort to fund and construct the public market, and then the Public Market Foundation will be tasked with operating the market on a day-to-day basis. And the Public Market Foundation is a nonprofit organization, so unlike a traditional commercial retail operator, the foundation's goal is really going to be to earn enough revenue from rents and events and other things to kind of cover operating costs. So that'll help keep rents affordable to a wide range of potential vendors. And then in addition, the thought right now is to pursue a strategy of rents that are a combination of some kind of per square foot rental fee, as well as some percentage of sales. So we want, if a vendor is having enormous success, their rent might tick up a little bit because they're able to pay a little bit more into the full operation of the market. If another vendor is having a little bit less success, their rent might be a little bit lower. So, I think the combination of a nonprofit operator and really the mission of the market being a place that cultivates new entrepreneurs will help inform the strategy around how the rent is structured.
Any plans for pop-up spaces that could be shared by multiple businesses who can't afford full-time?
Yes, I apologize. I went too quickly over one of the slides, and I meant to point that out. There are a number of locations in the market where there will be another layer of modularity that allows for shared spaces for multiple tenants, if you will, if people want to share a week, if you will, or just work side by side. And then also those micro retail modular pieces that I did point out would be another opportunity for that to happen.
And then if we need special things, when do we ask? Like an example, 240 volt outlet.
Well,
I don't even know what that means.
Okay. I was kind of looking at Brent. We have, so we will have what the architecture will provide will be a certain setup, let's say, for each of those vendor types. So as I mentioned before, some of the vendors that are meant for food prep will have the hood for exhaust. It will have a certain kind of power accommodated, assuming that there's cooking happening, and it'll have a certain kind of sink setup. So as I understand it, vendors will have an opportunity to decide to choose one of those or not. I keep leaning forward. I don't need to do that. You're right. Okay. Can you hear me if I just sit normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry.
And then,
Go ahead
okay.
if you want.
And then there will be other stalls that may need more intervention that the tenant will bring. So very specific fine tuning would happen a year from now, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Brent? Yeah.
So it's a multi-step process, and our first step is to get the whole building up and running, and then we're going to focus in on each tenant space, and then each tenant will have the opportunity of articulating that space the way they see fit and need.
We'll stay on vendors. With the inclusion of food truck vending, how are we going to ensure that indoor vendors are prepared foods do not lose business, given that they will be paying rent and overhead costs?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think it gets to a theme of the last few questions, which Tracy touched on a little bit of, we want a wide array of businesses to have the opportunity to be in the market in different ways. And that ranges from those, kind of little kiosk type spaces in that main artery of the market, which you could rent on a daily basis, bring your products in, set up shop, pay a daily rate, and be up and running and open for business that day or that week, to a more permanent space, but something that's still pretty small and move-in ready, where you might sign a lease for a year and say, that's my space, I'm operating there, to scaling up to a prepared food vendor that might take a larger footprint space that includes a cooking hood which is an enormously costly piece of equipment if you're moving into a traditional retail space, cooking equipment potentially, and, kind of be ready to go with a little bit more investment on your part. On up to we have some anchor spaces that we're envisioning as more of a, established business that would sort of fit out their space to their needs specifically. So, we want to kind of meet that, the needs of different vendors and kind of meet every entrepreneur where they are and try to make the market work for them. And, to the point about the potential for food carts and food trucks, I think one of the amazing aspects of this building is it's an old city garage. It's huge. It has these huge doors and these big clear span open spaces. So you create this opportunity for a unique environment in that South Hall where, food carts and food trucks can come in and set up and vend. I think we're really envisioning that as something that would happen periodically, probably not a full-time situation for those vendors. And those vendors would, pay a rate presumably to be in the market as well. So, part of the logic of markets is that a rising tide lifts all boats. If you have exciting and interesting things going on, like an indoor food cart event, that's something that people will kind of come to see because it's pretty cool. And, more foot traffic in the market will ultimately support all of the vendors in the market, even the more kind of permanent ones. So, competition and getting the right mix and balance of vendors, making sure that everybody's paying a fair rate is a difficult operational challenge. But the intent is that with more activity and more foot traffic and more people and more energy, different stuff going on, different times of the year, different times of the day, it's a place where a lot of people can ultimately be successful.
Two questions here. Are you still accepting vendor applications? And then what will the criteria be for selection?
So yes, actually, we receive them daily. The MadisonPublicMarket.org is a great place you can go, and you can actually still sign up. And like I said, the foundation will be into negotiations with the vendors. The criteria has yet to be determined what actually will take to get into the market. That's something that's still getting worked out. Like I said, we're kind of getting the building set first, and then going to focus in on populating that area. But I mean, like I said, the purpose, well, like I said, but the purpose of the market is to, ensure that diverse space. So women, minorities, first generation immigrants, they're going to break first. So that's going to be the direction that we'll be looking in to make sure that you make into the pie the equity and the diversity in the market, with the idea of making them successful will make the market successful.
What are the water drainage and water table considerations? Example, flooding.
Maybe I'll start, but if somebody could bring a mic over to Ken as well. So those of you who remember pretty well, and I'm sure most of you do, last summer about this time, there was quite a lot of water in that area. And we've been doing what we can to prepare and mitigate that. So there's a new stormwater ordinance that's coming online that will help us deal with water in a more robust way. But also the cisterns that I mentioned before in terms of water capture, so that water that's falling on the roofs doesn't just end up spilling into the Yahara and adding or exacerbating the issues, but is collected and used as part of our strategy as well. Ken, I'm going to turn.
Yeah, so I guess what I would add to that is the stormwater management system for the site itself, for the public market, is very robust, and it's more than taking care of the runoff from the site and from the building. Obviously we're aware of the street flooding that happens in the isthmus, and taking great care to make sure that the building floor elevation is protected from runoff that's not from our site.
A couple questions, or does someone want to add on to that? Or are we good?
I mean, just real quick, I think to reiterate the point, the project will really be a model of stormwater management, in a way kind of pioneering implementation of a new and more robust ordinance that the city is implementing. And with the rainwater capture in the cisterns, it's also a great opportunity to kind of tell the story of how sort of best practices around water management. And, we're very conscious of the fact that this site is located adjacent to the Yahara River, and Madison is really defined by its lakes. So we want to, not only sort of implement these best practices, but also really kind of celebrate them, showcase them, and present the public market as really a model of where the city needs to go when it comes to stormwater management.
A couple of questions about the roof. Plots for community gardening, say top flat part of the roof. So community gardening, wondering about the roof, and then support a patio seating opportunity in good weather down the road or if budget permits.
Wouldn't we all love that? Our roof is actually, it's going to be covered primarily in PV. The structure that's holding the roof up is actually not strong enough for a robust garden opportunity or seating opportunity, and nor will our budget dollars stretch to beef that up and make that happen. We would love that too. We will have wonderful opportunities at the ground level, however, for seating and engaging with one another in that way. But the roof is going to be doing some great work for us in capturing and collecting sunlight.
Has there been any discussion of compost collection?
There has. I don't know which one of you wants to take that one.
Yeah, we can start. What we're anticipating is there is composting happening in the market, and it's a food producing kind of space, and inevitably we do have excess amounts, and so we will be handling that through a composting initiative that the market is being designed for, and so this will be a part of the collection of general garbage, recycled material, and then composting itself. It will be going on off-site, so we will be anticipating servicing with a third party for the actual digestion of that composted material.
So in connection to that, are each of the vendors' stalls intended to be self-contained? Example, dishwashing, some cold and dry stages, and prep space with more available large spaces.
There is a shared market kitchen, so not all of the vendor spaces need to be self-contained. We do anticipate some will be, but there are shared amenities. There's shared storage spaces, shared refrigerated storage spaces, and then this market kitchen where vendors can use that to prep and get ready for their day.
Have you been in touch with the Northside Farmers manager? I don't want this public market to harm our existing market in any way. Example, days you will operate. Avoid Sunday. Underlined.
Yeah, I think it's a good question that gets to a larger point. That in Madison, we are located among one of the most abundant agricultural regions in the world, and we have this great culture of embracing the food that's grown in southern Wisconsin. And part of that is farmers markets. And, with the Dane County Farmers Market, we have one of the largest and most beloved farmers markets in the country. And then we have all these great community farmers markets spread across the city. And, the public market doesn't want to compete to replace with the farmers markets. The public market wants to really amplify and support them. And we think that can happen in a variety of ways. One, the market is going to have different operating procedures, different operating hours. It's going to have a little bit of a different vendor mix. We're not anticipating too many, full-time kind of direct farmer producers in the market. There'll be a little bit more of a focus on prepared food and food products. And we also foresee a lot of really interesting partnerships with farmers markets, such as, it's the end of the farmers market day on a Saturday downtown or a Sunday on the north side or what have you, and farmers got leftover produce. They can drive to the public market, partner with a potential vendor who takes that produce, chops it up, and makes a food product. Or situations where it's a beautiful Saturday, farmers market's busy, and it happens to be a time of year where there's a lot of, some vegetable that we might not be that familiar with. Kohlrabi, everybody's selling kohlrabi. I don't know what to do with kohlrabi. Hey, 2 o'clock down at the public market, there's going to be a cooking class with a Madison chef who's going to do a demonstration on what to do with kohlrabi. So, I think thinking about the public market as really something that amplifies and supports this overall food system in the city and contributes positively to our farmers market scene is the way we're approaching it.
This question, how many vendor spaces will actually be available? And then it says, in the design of space, how are you to accommodate that many businesses? So those kind of go hand in hand.
Quantity. Do you remember, Mitch, off the top of your head?
Yep.
It's all modular, so
You don't know.
year by year, whatever. Right now,
Or do you know off the top of your head?
I mean, you're welcome to come on up, yeah.
I'm mobile.
That's right, she's got a mic.
Yes.
hey, so Tracy has mentioned it. I think Dan probably has a couple. I'm Mitch Carr. I'm the project architect again. Sorry. So again, everything in here is modular, from the kiosks that move around on the ground and can be relocated to the actual stall framing system. So, 1 year right now, the way the floor plans you're going to see right now are laid out, there's about 32, 33 vending spots. That assumes that all of them are a certain size. As the market operates, 5 years from now, it might come to pass that the certain set of vendors that wants to be there wants smaller stalls. And because it's modular, that can happen. So it could be 33 on opening day. It might be 40 later on. As Tracy mentioned, there's a lot of shared spaces. A lot of our vendors don't necessarily want to be there paying a big rent to be there 6 or 7 or 5 days a week. They only want to be there on Thursday through Friday or something. So there's a lot of opportunities through our shared spaces that we're creating for people to be kind of in and out of the market as they want, and there'll have to be leasing strategies that support that. But there will be spots where 4 spaces can support 10 or 20 vendors maybe. So a lot of cool little things like that that'll happen as well.
There was another part to that question about how does the building accommodate all those different businesses. And I'll just mention again that a lot of thought has gone into and consideration and debate and conversation about how to set this building up so that it functions really well for all the vendors. A lot more time than maybe normal has been spent on thinking about loading and trash and recycling and how materials come in and out of the building and making sure there's enough space and enough openings for all of that to happen fluidly. Thinking about how, Ken's drawn many times over, how semis and box trucks and cars and all of these things come at various times throughout the day and how we accommodate all of that. So I encourage you to ask some more questions over by the boards, but we have put a lot of thought into that.
How much space, min and max, do the businesses get?
That's going to vary widely, so I don't know that we know that.
I mean, Mitch might be best equipped, but I think the downward scalability, I think goes down to like renting one of those little kiosks for your,
4 foot by 6 foot box.
Yeah, 4 foot by 6 foot box where you bring your stuff, you set up your vend. We have some spaces that are in the neighborhood of 100 square feet, so like a more sort of traditional kind of under tent type farmers market size space. We have some prepared food spaces that are in kind of the 300 square foot range, so enough space for food prep, countertop type space to serve customers. And then on the largest end of the scale, we have some 1,000-ish square foot or 2,000 square foot space maybe for more of like an anchor tenant. So like think of like a small restaurant space that's really in the market. So I think that's a good question. I think it gets back to this point of we want the market to scale to all sorts of different types of businesses.
And don't forget, too, that there's just the pop-up opportunity. That whole South Hall, we show it as different kinds of event spaces, but that's also intended to be pop-up market space. And there's little nooks and crannies all throughout the streets and boulevards that allow for opportunity for very micro and anything kind of in between.
So we are at 7:30. We only have a few more. And then there'll also be opportunity for the small breakouts if you want to follow up with our panelists. But how are you going to design this MPM to be different from cookie cutter malls?
Yay. I'm so glad that question came up. Or did you guys write that question?
It's an internal question, yeah.
One of the things that we've talked about a couple times tonight is the very special nature of these large apertures, these big garage doors. That is pretty unique, and we're excited about being able to celebrate that. We've studied and ate at and visited many markets on our own just throughout our lives, but also, of course, for this project. And we think about, there are some commonalities that seem to keep emerging, and we're trying to make sure that this really feels Madisonian, infusing a lot of art, for example. That feels like something that is Madisonian. Making sure that how we treat those micro vendor opportunities or shared vendor spaces act as really the right kind of backdrop that's quiet enough and doesn't scream, I'm a market, but lets the products really be the show. Lighting experiences that are varied instead of kind of a one-size-fits-all model, which is often what you see. Providing opportunities for kids to play. That seemed to be another thing that bubbled up often with a special fixture. What else, guys? Indoor-outdoor connection through those garage doors in particular is really quite special.
I think one more thing to add to that is this is going to really give the vendors an opportunity to create their own space. It's like cookie cutter malls. If you've worked in a mall or been in a mall, it's a Radio Shack, it's a Zoomies, it's the same four walls, and it's pretty cookie cutter. But this is going to provide an opportunity for the vendor to come in and create their own space and create their own unique identity in the ground box that they've been given or that they've chosen, and they can then fill it out themselves the way they would like it to look and the way they like it to feel. So it feels kind of unique for them, for their individuality, their individual space.
What type of surfacing will you have on the walls? Asking because of the comments about sustainability. What might you need to add to finish the space?
We're adding as little as we can, frankly. We're doing some, cleaning and repairing and that sort of thing. But the finish materials will get fine-tuned in the coming weeks, but they're pretty basic. We're using linoleum for some of the cabinetry, for example, because it's sustainable and doesn't put toxins into the air for us. We're using tile in places where we need tile. We're sealing concrete floors. In many of the floor areas will be either left as the epoxy that's there or concrete that's sealed. There's really very few new materials coming in.
Has or will there be, one more question about accessibility, about universal accessible design, including dementia-friendly signage for non-native English, non-English spaces, or I'm having a hard time reading this, but I think it's about accessible design, dementia-friendly, and then non-English speaking, anyone who that's not their primary language.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten deep into the signage design yet, but we have talked about using iconography and graphic communication over a lot of text. That seems important. So I guess stay tuned for that one.
Will neighborhood groups be able to use the meeting space for free?
For free. Jamal?
Stay tuned for that one.
All right. Do you see vendors in the PM using their space as their primary business, or will most PM vendors be there as a secondary supplementary business? It's a long day. You get the question. Are they going to use it as their primary space or secondary?
Probably a mix.
I think a mix. I think we definitely could imagine, and we actually have some businesses that are interested in being in the market that are kind of local businesses, but household names, so to speak. And the market could certainly be a great second location for them as anchors that attract customers. But then we also certainly have a lot of vendors that are viewing this as their primary place of business and primary employment.
Last question for this portion. I think this one might be for Dan. There is a plan to build a public market in the heart of the downtown. Will your East Side public market still be viable in the face of competition that is more centrally located? Will it serve all citizens of Madison?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I'm not familiar with the downtown concept, but speaking about this site on First Street, I mean, great cities have great downtowns, and Madison has a beautiful, vibrant downtown. But I think truly world-class cities have places beyond the downtown. They have nodes and activity centers that have an identity all their own. And I think with this site, 18 blocks east of the Capitol at First Street, we have the opportunity to create that. It's adjacent to a park. It's sort of along the river. It's at the point where the city kind of narrows into the isthmus, so it's a gateway into the central city. And with this building, we are fortunate to be inheriting this amazing structure that is obsolete for the city's fleet services operation, but it's an absolutely fantastic building to convert to the public market. So, I think if there's a market that emerges downtown in addition to this market, I think that's great. I think that this position, this location, this building, at the capstone of the flourishing East Washington Avenue corridor, in this existing large, solid structure with an amazing design, is going to be something that's really special and something that has actually got an identity and sense of place and character and excitement that is very unique to that site, and will be something special that will be a visitor destination. Driving in from the airport, this is going to be the main thing you see as you kind of enter the center of town. It's got great visibility, great transit access. So, I think this location, this market, this building, and this amazing, most importantly, mix of vendors that have expressed an interest in being there are gonna do great.
I'd like to speak on that as well, actually. I think one of the best things about this town, at least from my opinion, is the so many different types of people in this city. And what we really lack is a place where all of those types of people get together on a regular basis to share each other's stories. Whether it be something I made for your hands or for your hair, something that I made for your stomach, something that I made for your children. And this is going to really create an opportunity, no matter what the downtown market is created for, but this is going to create an opportunity to have all of those different cultures together in a place that they feel comfortable, and each of them feel comfortable sharing their stories and their cultures and their food and their ability to make Madison a great place. So I think that that's the key to this market, is that it's going to be a place that is different than anything we have already set up in town. And on that note, just, this isn't the last time for anybody to get involved if you want to be involved. This is just your last time basically to chat with MSR about the design of the project. But you can stay connected with us through Facebook, through Instagram. You can sign up for e-updates at madisonpublicmarket.org. There's always going to be an opportunity for you to lend your arms, your back, and your wallet to help this be a place where you can feel comfortable being in and say, I had a part in making this, the diverse, incredible place that it is and can be, and be up to a 5-state draw. The way we look at it, it's going to be an incredible spot for people to share in each other's commonalities. So, yeah, that's what I had to say.
Thank you, Jamal, and thank you to all of our panelists tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One more minute. We're on the countdown to the small breakout sessions if you'd like to take part in that. So just 1 minute more of your time as part of the formal presentation. So like Jamal was saying, stay connected with us. On that resources page, on that handout that you picked up on your way in, the foundation website, ways to sign up for the email updates. The website is great. They also have their Facebook page, their Instagram, lots of fun stuff to click around and stay updated on there. Also, the city's project page, we also update that regularly. And then also our Facebook engineering page, we keep updated on that. And we'll also have an upcoming podcast check-in, hopefully on our new podcast for the engineering division, Everyday Engineering. So we're hoping that once we get further in the process, we'll have an opportunity to sit down and chat and get a check-in on that as well. So lots of opportunities for you to stay connected. Again, thank you so much for coming. I am also a resource for you. If you're trying to get connected with someone and you're not getting a response for whatever reason, because we're all emailing all the time, I can be a last resort or a first resort. So send me an email, Hannah Molenitsky, that's H. Molenitsky at cityofmadison.com. I think I covered it all, everyone. And so did they. So again, now we'll break into those small groups. If you have questions to follow up with any one of our experts or teammates, feel free. But again, thank you for coming tonight.